The following presentation is a production of Ride the Wave Media.
We are those guys, and we hope to be your guys. We just had to. It's our Halloween special. The lights are kind of down low here on my end. Nick Ferguson, that star shining so bright. You need to wear sunglasses indoors. What's going on, Nick Ferguson? How are you, my man?
Oh, man. Where do I begin? I'm very frustrated. And I think you know why I'm frustrated. So
we'll get there.
This is my frustration on the back burner.
Okay? This is supposed to be for Thursday. We're sitting here Wednesday night, and we're kind of sweating a little baseball. But we'll see if the baseball season is over by the time this podcast either ends our recording or when you hear us live Thursday morning. Well, taped to live, however you want to put it. Nick, we're now approaching week 9 in the NFL season. You know, it used to be a cut and clean. We're through 8 weeks. We're exactly halfway through. But no, we play 17 games now. So we got to get through that 9th week until we say we're finally over the halfway point. So I'm excited. It's Halloween. I think we're going to play a little Scooby-Doo, if you will. We're going to unmask. We've got 2 teams apiece that we're excited to kind of, here's who they were through the first 8 weeks, 7, maybe 8 games played. We're going to take off that mask. And it was really Old Man Jenkins. Who are these teams that, you know, through the first half of the season compared to how we think they're going to finish things out? Always fun to do on Halloween. But first, Nick, I wanted to start with Anthony Richardson and the Indianapolis Colts ultimately getting benched for a 4-4 football team. This is Anthony Richardson, who had 13 starts at Florida, now 10 starts in the National Football League spread throughout 10 games. And the Colts decided that it was in their best interest to win games to put Joe Flacco in there. Richardson had missed time both his rookie season and this year due to injury. Gardner Minshew, we saw step up last year. Now Joe Flacco. Here's the quote for me, Shane Steichen, when asked if Anthony Richardson would start for the Colts again, quote, "That would be great. We'll see." I think this is kind of a wild decision by the Indianapolis Colts, who at 4-4 believe that Flacco is the answer for them to get to the postseason for now.
Well, I don't think it's about the belief that Shane Steichen and the Colts believe that Flacco can get them there. I think it's kind of a two-parter. Right?
Okay.
And
we could probably spend a lot of time on it.
Right. So I'll get into Flacco later, but I think it's more about what they're seeing from the young quarterback in Anthony Richardson. I mean, I don't believe anyone anticipated that the reaction that he created was going to be what it was. And obviously, if you haven't seen it, you must have been living up on the rock. But if not, I will let you know.
Yeah, what happened, Nick?
This
was in the 23-20 loss to the Houston Texans. Now 0-2 against their AFC South rival, who's now leading the division by 2 games.
Right. So the idea was that, Anthony Richardson, in a close game, a game that the Colts could have won, he tapped out. He pulled himself out of the game, said he was tired. And don't get me wrong, you get tired playing football. You get tired doing so many things. And the determination of whether you're in shape or not is how quickly you recover. And for a guy to get tired, I mean, it's a common thing, but you never go to the podium and you never say it, even if it was true. And that's kind of the bigger thing. And for me, the first thing I think about is, if I was a player in that locker room, how am I going to feel about my quarterback, who I'm supposed to look up to, supposed to be the face of the franchise, saying that, "Well, coach, I'm tired, boss. So I needed a break." Oh, yeah. Shane Steichen said, "Oh, we're going to give you all the break you want. You're going to sit right here next to me, and you're going to hold this clipboard. The next time you go in, Joe Flacco would have to be injured." Now, getting to the Flacco part. Now, obviously, this is not a situation the Colts thought they would be in, but they have to handle and deal with the situation and not feeling as though Anthony Richardson is as committed as though he should. So you go with an elder statesman, a guy who, shocked everyone last year when he was able to push Cleveland and get them to the point where they was able to get to. So Joe Flacco is Mr. Reliable. In a situation like this, You just need something that you can hang your hat on that you know is going to go out there and compete.
Now, this maybe your perspective is much appreciated, Nick, because across the media, you say, "Oh, Anthony Richardson, scrambled, shook off a 300-pound nose tackle, was able to get a first down, took a play off, got right back onto the football field." I think there's a little bit of consideration coming from people that didn't play the game. But Nick, you join a number of people that I saw react to it. I think Luke Kuechly called out Cam Newton, saying that he would never, number one, would never do something like that. Plenty of other examples of players just totally blasting Anthony Richardson for this decision. And this is, I mean, taking yourself off the field is, where does that rank among one of the, things that a player could or could not do? Is this just one of the cardinal sins as a professional football player?
Yeah, it is a cardinal sin for any player, no matter where you're drafted. But when you are drafted in the first round and you play the quarterback position, a position that most view you as being a team leader, this looks really bad. I mean, you tapped out in a divisional game when you were chasing the Houston Texans, and you're supposed to be the quarterback of the future. And I'm sure the Colts fans looked at Anthony Richardson and they went, Andrew Luck, Peyton Manning. These guys would have never done this. And if they would have, they would have never verbalized it publicly. And that's kind of my thing. We all have issues that we go through as people and as players. The one thing you never do, you never openly admit that publicly, because you can't really live that down. And if I'm Anthony Richardson, how do you walk into that locker room and face those guys? How in the hell do you walk into the quarterback locker room yourself and be like, okay, well, I'm still the guy of the future. You guys draft me to be that guy. I am that guy. It's like, no, you're not. You tapped out. So as our leader, if our leader taps out, what happens to us as a team?
You talk about the future, you talk about the leader. Anthony Richardson is one of the captains of the Indianapolis Colts. So they follow his lead, and his actions clearly reverberated not just, amongst his teammates, but the coaching staff making that decision as well. Now, 6 starts in 2024, 44% completion, 4 touchdowns, 7 picks. However, there's no one in the National Football League that has a larger ADOT, average depth of target, on his throws. So we're talking about low completion percentage, trying to throw the ball downfield. But again, 10 starts in his career. Is it just a result of this one play benching himself, or is the leash getting shorter and shorter for starting quarterbacks? Because look, the leash is getting shorter and shorter for coaches too. When Shane Steichen was hired, Chris Ballard was talking about a 3, maybe 4-year process when the maturation of Anthony Richardson. He said Terry Bradshaw probably wouldn't make it in the league because he didn't play right away or play well right away. Troy Aikman didn't win a game his rookie season. Derek Carr started 0-10 in his career. All of them certainly carved out, NFL careers. I'm not lumping Derek Carr with Troy Aikman and Terry Bradshaw, but you get the idea. These things take time, but the pressure cooker in the National Football League now in 2024, does that play into it more so than this one decision made by Anthony Richardson? Is this just 10 games over the course of 1.5 seasons, and the Colts just aren't liking what they get on the investment that they made for the 4th overall selection in 2023?
No, this is a case of the Colts not liking the investment that they made. It's like going out and buying a new car, right? It's very trendy. Everyone says that this is the car to buy, Motor Trend car of the year. You go buy the vehicle. You don't even test drive it, right? Then you take it home and you go, you know what? There's something about this that feels not so good. And then you go out there and you stand in front of the car and you look at it and you're like, you know what? I fell victim of the whole trend, the narrative of what the guy was supposed to be. You forgot to look under the hood. You forgot to see what the car was actually made of, right? And you didn't even test drive it. So that's where I feel as though the Colts are looking at this situation, and they are second guessing their decision in drafting Anthony Richardson, saying, okay, well, maybe he wasn't ready. Yeah, he performed well at the combine, but maybe the mental fortitude he needed as a leader, knowing as though you're following Andrew Luck, you're following Peyton Manning, is not the guy that you really want. And I hate to say that, I mean, if things don't turn around, I'm sure Colts fans will start looking at Anthony Richardson the same way they look at Jeff George, right? A guy who's got a strong arm, but he just didn't have those leadership qualities. And it puts Shane Steichen and the Colts in a tough situation because Joe Flacco is not a long-term solution. So they may have to go back into the draft and try to find another quarterback.
That's tough to do, right? Clearly, there's no long-term plan with a 39-year-old. And before selecting Anthony Richardson, we saw Carson Wentz, Matt Ryan, Phillip Rivers. Listen, you zoom out, and this is kind of an indictment on the front office led by Chris Ballard based on their decision-making at the most premium position in all of professional sports. So, Nick, Anthony Richardson failing to complete 50% of his passes, the combination of arm strength and mobility at that position. Did they just fall victim to thinking they could have found the next Josh Allen? I think it's so fascinating when you look at teams that identify raw talents and specific traits when it comes to the quarterback position. And as we naturally progress in the sport and the best athletes get the football in their hands, in large part because the quarterbacks make the most money, but time and time again, teams can fool themselves into thinking we'll take the raw athlete who may not have the amount of reps that, other experienced seasoned college players have, thinking that they can fix all of those problems. And yet there's only one Josh Allen, but you have Anthony Richardson to this point. You have the Trey Lances of the world. We can criticize Anthony Richardson all we want, but maybe this has more to say about talent evaluation in the NFL and these teams thinking that they can quote unquote fix or develop these raw prospects that just aren't ready to play at the professional level.
Yeah, I think it has a lot to do with the evaluation because, I mean, you have a lot of scouts who fall in love with the tangibles, right?
Mhm.
Oh my God, you look at his size and his hand size and how the ball jumps out of his hands. We always hear about that. Look at his arm strength. But then we never really look at what's above the neck and what's below the waist. And what I mean by that is you're talking about a guy's mind and how he thinks, how he processes information. Can he lead in tough situations? But also what happens below the waist, which has a lot to do with their footwork. And look, sometimes there's a hit and miss, and there's a 40, there is a short shuttle, there's a vertical jump, but there's nothing really in place to really test a guy's heart. And it seems as though I'm attacking somewhat the integrity of Anthony Richardson, but when you tap out, I mean, that's the only thing I can go back to. I know how difficult it is to get into the NFL. I know how difficult it is to stay in the NFL as an undrafted player. And the last thing you want to do is tap out. So it makes it really difficult. But hopefully this changes some of the process when it comes to GMs and scouts and how they evaluate it. And they just kind of move to other aspects of a quarterback's game other than hand size and how the ball jumps out their hands.
Well, this may sound crazy, Nick, but granted, we're given the COVID exception for a lot of the quarterbacks that were coming out. But Bo Nix started 60 games between Auburn and Oregon. Jaden Daniels started, for 5 years between Arizona State and LSU. Like maybe experience just kind of helps with some of these things. I'm just saying.
Well, experience helps, and I think what Shane Steichen was trying to do with the Colts when he was looking at Anthony Richardson. Obviously, the guy is a specimen when you see him, and the way that he throws the ball because he throws the ball with a lot of velocity. It seemed as though maybe there was an intention of trying to duplicate the same thing, what Philly had with Jalen Hurts, and maybe seeing a little of that, or maybe seeing too much of that in Anthony Richardson, which caused this problem, which forced them not to focus on the most important things, the mental makeup of Anthony Richardson.
Well, The Indianapolis Colts will be certainly interesting to watch. The AFC South is one that even when you played, Nick, may not have been the most competitive. So look, they're 2 games back, really 3 with the tiebreakers to the Houston Texans, considering they lost them twice. So they believe the season isn't lost, and neither should we. So we move on, Nick, with this Halloween edition of those guys. Um, Really, when you zoom out, we're halfway through the season and we're kind of discovering who some of these teams really are, Nick. I want to start with one team in particular that you saw through 8 weeks. You're ready to take off the mask from any preconceived notions you had going into the season. Maybe they came out with a hot start 8 weeks into the season. Rip off that mask on one NFL team and tell me who they really are for Halloween.
Well, the mask I want to take off is for the Cincinnati Bengals and Joe Burrow. Like this is a team coming into the season. I mean, obviously, since Joe Burrow became the quarterback, a lot of Super Bowls aspiration. We're talking about a team that ended up being in the Super Bowl, a couple plays away from winning one and defeating the Rams, but that wouldn't be the story, the end of the story for the Cincinnati Bengals. But the problem is, I thought they were going to be more productive offensively, and it just seemed as though they haven't really been there. And this was a defense that over the past couple of seasons were kind of like a thorn in the backside of Kansas City Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes. And you have to wonder what really happened to their defense. And here's the other thing. I mean, 0-4 at home. I
Yeah.
mean, if you can't defend your own home turf, what in the hell can you defend?
They came into this season, Nick, with a contract dispute for both T. Higgins and Jamar Chase. And it's really telling just how different this offense, how much better they are when T. Higgins gets to play, right? He misses the first 2 weeks of the season, losses that unbelievable shock of a loss to New England where they put up 10 points, and the 1 point loss to Kansas City. Maybe we'll excuse since they're 7-0. Meanwhile, he returns to the field, misses some action here and there, but they're 3-2 with him in the lineup, averaging closer to 25, 30 points a game with him in the lineup. So thinking that they can save money, and he's had his own injury setbacks, but it's going to be a difficult tightrope for him to navigate, understanding that if he's playing at less than 100% and his production, his numbers don't show up, the Bengals could use that bargaining against him. If he misses too many games to get right, the Bengals could say he didn't play enough games when doing their next contract negotiation. So it's just clearly the offense is better with him in the lineup, but looking out for himself and hitting the free agent market potentially for his age 26 season, it could lock up his financial security. So when all of their weapons are healthy, the receivers, the running backs, I know that Chase Brown is kind of getting worked in. Zach Moss is, was one of their leading rushers for the first month of the season. They're still trying to figure things out, which is kind of hard to do, to recognize, knowing that, look, they finally had a full off season of Joe Burrow. They move on from an integral piece like Joe Mixon, who's one of the top running backs in the NFL when healthy this season. I guess I'm hungry right now, but they made some wholesale changes. They were supposed to get some continuity with Burrow, and yet here they are, third, in the AFC North. I want to talk about an AFC team, Nick, that through the first 8 weeks of the season, they are exactly who they were to end last year. So I take the mask off and I see the Buffalo Bills as a legitimate AFC contender because more than anything, they are the most balanced offense in the AFC and can change their identity based on who their opponent is. Now, what I need to find out and what we're trying to figure out is with Von Miller returning off of his suspension, how this defense takes shape. They played one of their most complete games against Seattle this past week, who we thought, could be one of the surprise teams out of the NFC. Meanwhile, Josh Allen hasn't had to play as much hero ball. They're working in Amari Cooper. James Cook has been absolutely dominant in the backfield. And this Buffalo Bills team, we ripped this mask off, and they could be really one of the best teams behind the Kansas City Chiefs.
Well, yeah, they could be, but they still have issues. And, having a quarterback who runs like a running back and having James Cook in your backfield, it definitely helps out. The addition of Mari Cooper brings a veteran presence on the offensive side of the ball and a reliable weapon for Josh Allen. And having Von Miller come back, hopefully, conditioning is what it needs to be, but that should be a boost and a part to be able to uplift the Bills' defense. But I mean, when I look at the Buffalo Bills, it seems like the same storyline every single year. They start out great. Josh Allen is having somewhat of an MVP season. Then we get to the back half of the season and they fall off as things start to get tight. And oh, by the way, you still have to contend with the Kansas City Chiefs, which Josh Allen seemed to can't get over. If Josh Allen was Superman, Kansas City is definitely his kryptonite. And oh, by the way, don't mention the team that the Bills lost to earlier in the season, the Baltimore Ravens. So yeah, it looks great. Everything looks up for the Bills and Josh Allen, but I still have my doubts about Allen and the Buffalo Bills being able to get over the hump because they haven't proven that they can over the past couple of years.
The Dolphins and then the Colts. We'll see if it's still Joe Flacco come week 10. And then they get their matchup at home against the Kansas City Chiefs before heading into the bye week. So we're going to find out who these Buffalo Bills really are. But by taking the mask off now, I just want to shine a light on the team that, look, 34 passing plays, 34 rushes, and they get a quality win against the Seattle Seahawks. Nick, another team you're looking to take the mask off on as we approach the second half of the season.
The Washington Commanders.
Who are they really?
We don't really know. We
Ooh.
don't know. Here's a team that finds ways to win games. And, over the past couple of years, when we looked at the Commanders, well, here's what we knew about them. They found ways to lose games. That's what bad teams do. And watching them play against Chicago Bears, I mean, that last Hail Mary play was utterly ridiculous.
Yeah, back up. Tell me about that play, if you've seen anything like it, and then I need you to rate Tyreek Stevenson's performance on that play. But first, anything you've seen like that before?
I've never seen a play like that before. I've seen Hail Mary plays completed, but with the drama leading up to that particular play, nothing like it. It was an epic fail even before the Hail Mary was even thrown. Right before that, I think it was probably about 6 seconds on the clock. The defense for Chicago Bears, they're playing off. So they allowed the Washington Commanders to run like an 8 to 6 yard kind of speed out to put the ball in perfect distance so Jaden Daniels could actually take it shot down the field, right? And then there was a little kind of subtle timeout before the Hail Mary took place. And then to see the Chicago Bears line up where they're only rushing 3, which I think is utterly the stupidest thing that I've ever seen in football. And then they had a guy on the second level spying Jaden Daniels. Jaden Daniels is running around. The guy who's spying him is just staying on the second level, moving around. And I'm like, at some point, you're going to trigger because you're just standing there. I'm like, do you not understand situational football? Even if Jaden Daniels were to run, that's a long way. And someone you would think maybe would track him down and tackle him. So you might as well add on and add more pressure to the throw. That didn't happen. And then Tyreek Stevens waving at the crowd. I don't know what the hell he was doing. But then you get 3 receivers running towards him. You can even see the Washington Commanders fans pointing, trying to alert him of what's happening. But then he finally tries to get into the play. He jumps. I don't know if he tips it, whomever tips it. But the idea on those types of plays, some DBs think that they're free plays, so they all try to catch the ball. It's a cheap interception, you think. But what usually happens, the ball is deflected, comes off of someone's hands because you're supposed to bat it down, and then a guy who is the back catcher catches the ball. So from a defensive standpoint, everything about those last 2 plays were utter disaster, but it only increases the folklore of one Jaden Daniels. And I had someone today tell me, well, when they think about Jaden Daniels, he's baby Jesus. I was like, what? He's looked at as being baby Jesus because Dan Quinn taking over and looking at Cliff Kingsbury, who is, in my opinion, he's a quarterback whisperer because he gets another guy like Jaden Daniels. But the Washington Commanders has surprised a lot of people. They are so far ahead than most people had thought they would be. And I have to give a big shout out to my dude, Adam Peters, the GM, for putting this team together.
Now, look, we're ripping this mask off, and we're talking about a team that has one team ahead of them in the NFC. I believe the 6-1 Lions. So we take this mask off. Are we looking at a team that's competing for a first round bye, Nick? Like the one overall seed in the NFC with Washington here?
I part of me wants to say yes, but I'm going to say no. And the reason I'm going to say that because you still have those darn pesky Detroit Lions, and we still don't know what they're going to do to shore up their defense come next week by trade deadline because we already know Aiden Hutchinson is not going to return, and he will not return until the team makes to the Super Bowl. So we don't really know what's going to happen. But right now, the number one team in the NFC, for me, in my opinion, based on how they perform, Jared Goff and the Detroit Lions.
Yeah, without a doubt. The last mask I think we need to rip off here, at least from my standpoint, have to be these LA Rams. Nick, did you know that when your best players on offense are healthy, you have a good offense? For a team that came out Thursday night against the Minnesota Vikings, what I saw with Puka, Nakua, and Cooper Kupp playing limited reps and their ability to put up points was just something to marvel. I mean, we talked about it in our last episode with our rapid reaction to Thursday night. I just think that it is a top 5 offense when everybody is healthy. And again, it's a big if. It's the National Football League, but getting these players back healthy at the right time, a game back of the Arizona Cardinals for the lead in the NFC West, they could just as easily, go on a tear, spreading the football out to those receivers, plus the contributions we saw from Demarcus Robinson. Meanwhile, Kyron Williams remaining to be that heartbeat. I'm not going to spend too much time on it. We back-to-back episodes with Rams love, and I understand we have a ton of love for LA, Nick, because the LA Dodgers are the 2024 World Series champions. They close it out Game 5. They get to celebrate in the Bronx before coming back to LA. So before we get to Nick, before we split, your Yankees tried. They won more World Series games than any other team but LA this year. Any reflections you have before we, this show of note just wants to talk about all of our teams. That includes baseball as well.
Well, my natural instincts are to use a bunch of words that I can't really use, but I'm sure you understand where I'm coming from. When I look at how the Yankees allowed this one to slip away from them, it's very frustrating, and I can only kind of equate to it as a dumpster fire because having 3 errors in which allow the Dodgers to put up 5 runs is utterly ridiculous, especially knowing as though these were all due to human error. So I'm sure that those individuals who were associated with the errors that I speak, let's just say they're going to have a long off season, a very long off season. So that's all I'm willing to say, because if I don't stop there, I'm going to say something I'm going to regret.
I'm going to be pushing those buttons, Nick. You talk about a long offseason. Maybe you and me, since we started this podcast recapping the Patriots dynasty, you and I could sit watching Netflix that 2004 Boston Red Sox comeback. Another time when the Yankees were at their best. But
with that being said, we could watch it. And then granted, the Yankees had a great season. They lose to a Dodgers team that I thought was just kind of uber talented. But even in the series, I mean, the hero and the MVP of this series wasn't Shohei Ohtani. It was freaking Freddie Freeman.
Yeah.
And he was like Freddy Krueger to the New York Yankees, because every time Freddie got up to bat, it was something was going to happen. I started calling him Five Nights at Freddy, right?
Yep.
Because it was somewhat of a terror, and it just scared the hell out of me. But, kudos to the Dodgers. I knew it was going to be a tough series, but they had a great squad, and they always have great squads. So, losing to a team like that, I mean, hey, kudos to them. They got the job done. But your Boston Red Sox, I can still remember who's your daddy.
Yeah.
Who's your daddy? That would always remain very classic to me.
2003 was a tough season. So look, if 2024 was tough sledding for the Yankees, maybe things will turn around in 2025, with or without Juan Soto, but we'll cross that bridge. And you called it. Freddie Freeman, the World Series MVP, 4 homers, 12 ribbies. He became the most consecutive games with a home run in the World Series, with 6 dating back to when the Dodgers won in 2020. So Nick, before we split, Thursday Night Football. It is the battle of Nick Ferguson, the Nick Ferguson Bowl, the battle of 2 former teams that Nick played for, the Houston Texans visiting the New York Jets. And look, not since the 2002 Jets with one Nick Ferguson had there been this much excitement coming into the season. Healthy Aaron Rodgers, improved weapons, big free agency spending on the defense. And here they are, last place in the AFC East, 2-6. The Houston Texans 6-2. So I'm not going to take the angle of, oh, Rodgers is talking about pepper water. What a goofball. Really, how did the Houston Texans go into this? Licking their own wounds. We won't get Nico Collins back for a week. They just lost Steph Diggs for the year. How do they avoid this more or less being a trap game? But also, look, I won't sleep on Aaron Rodgers in prime time.
Well, the best way they can do this, they have to do it from a total team standpoint. And often we talk about, complementary football, being able to throw the ball, being able to pass it. This is where a guy like Tank Dell definitely will need to, step up. But this is why you added Joe Mixon to your roster. And seeing that this year looks entirely different for offensive coordinator Bobby Slowick and CJ Stroud. Like, that first year was just great. It was just, they took the world by storm, but it seemed as though things are now starting to catch up. And this was with a healthy receiving core before Nico Collins went down for a couple of games. And then now the unfortunate news for Stephon Diggs. So this is going to be a tough game for the Texans to pull out. I'm just going to say right now, this is a must win for the New York Jets. And
Sure.
I think this game came at the right time because they needed to find a way to kind of put that bad taste or get that bad taste out of their mouth. And they're facing a team that has issues of their own. So this is the game I think that the Jets get back on track.
Yeah, I just want a close game. Sometimes you don't see that on Thursday, but when it's the standalone, you just want to see a competitive game. Look, the Jets defense gets a little shot in the arm with Hassan Reddick, who will play more snaps after making his season debut last week after that lengthy holdout. And then meanwhile, you look at the Jets offensive line and that Texans pass rush, the combination of Will Anderson and Daniil Hunter. You're talking about one of the best front fours in the National Football League. I think third in the NFL with 27 sacks. So the battle of the trenches is going to determine who's going to win this one. But Nick, I mean, how do you view this type of game for 2 franchises that you played for? One, your first team, the other being your last in the National Football League. Are you emotionally invested with your guy, D'Amico Ryans, your teammate in Houston? Or are you always going to look back to where you started your professional career with the New York Jets? How do you watch a game when you see 2 teams you played for up against each other?
Well, you look at it as a business transaction. And as they say in business, you take out all the emotion, right? You don't want to get wrapped up into it. So I'm just going to look at it as 2 teams that appear to be going into different directions, all trying to get a win on Halloween. And I mean, for the Jets, they're just trying to avoid, the game on Thursday night being Fright Night.
Yeah.
So look, let's see what happens. I still think that this is a game that the Jets need to win and the Jets should win.
Well, I'd have to quote Michael Jackson here on our way out. It's going to be a thrill on Thursday night. He's Nick Ferguson, 10 years in the National Football League with the Jets, with the Texans, and the Denver Broncos. Feel free to reach out to him at Nick Ferguson _25 for any questions about his teams, your teams. He's breaking down tape. He's got hot takes on Anthony Richardson quitting on the Colts, among many other things. I'm Alex Hardy. We are those guys. We hope to continue to be your guys. throughout the course of this NFL season. And hey, baseball's over. We got less distractions than we've ever had. So looking forward to chatting with you, Nick, when we officially hurdle over the halfway mark of the season. And it'll be a cold, crispy November in Denver. What do you have to say for the people on the way out, Nick?
Hey, if you guys are handing out candy for Halloween, don't give the kids that damn candy corn. That stuff is terrible. I hate that candy.
I'd actually be afraid to trick or treat at your house, Nick. There's probably some healthy snacks. Like I'm getting a box of raisins or a warm glass of apple cider vinegar.
Well, Alex, if you are trick or treating at the Ferguson household, hey man, I'm trying to reduce the dental work that parents have to pay because your kids eat so much darn sugar.
Yeah, they'll be thanking you for that, Nick.